We're going to kick off our news review, and as you can see, I'm joined by Martina Bett, The Sun's political correspondent, and Bethany Dawson, the London Playbook diary reporter at Politico. Apologies, I shouldn't do too many things at once on this shift. Too much coffee, trying to talk, balancing everything. Anyway, inner calm while we talk about the papers. We're going to kick off with The Observer, and this is a story that Labour really will, I suppose, create the biggest divisions within the party, one of the biggest divisions, and it's the benefit cuts, because those backbenchers aren't really kind of backing off from the benefit cuts.
That's right. The Observer is reporting that Labour MPs opposed to the government's $5 billion benefit cuts will still refuse to back the legislation, support
despite
the legislation.
whips trying to gather them up.
Exactly. And one thing they're trying to offer them is like money offered by ministers to alleviate child poverty, basically in a bid to win them back. And they're still saying, no, we're still going to not support the legislation. This doesn't mean that they're going to vote against it. And the question is this major rebellion hardening? Because we've heard so far just the usual suspects, just MPs on the left of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer has shown very clearly at the beginning of his premiership, those MPs that were on the left of the party that voted for the two-child benefit cut to basically kick them out of the party, and that was a big signal that he put. I personally don't think it would be that big of a rebellion that it is, but I think the question here is more about this huge ballooning benefits bill and what the government is doing about it. And there are fears in government, of people that I spoke to, that they're saying that actually they're worried that Number 10 watered down the benefit package, the welfare reform package, because of fears of this rebellion. And they're saying that what they came up with is actually half measures that are not going to really solve the problem, and that the benefits bill is still going to balloon. Now, you know, it was 48 billion last year. It's projected to get to 67 billion by 2029, 2030. That is a lot of money. And again, as we discussed throughout, a big headache for the government.
It is, Bethany. You know, we've heard from Conservative MPs who have said actually they would have gone further than Labour have currently gone, because, as Martina says, that ballooning benefits bill isn't going away anytime soon.
It's not, and the week before they introduced these measures, Number 10 had different groups of MPs coming in and out, and they were trying to persuade them that this was a good idea, that this was a good thing, it was a necessary thing. And it might be that those discussions did see the measures watered down. I had MPs telling me that in those meetings people were crying, it was really emotional, they were really lobbying the government. And I don't think backbenchers want to do a rebellion. There are some that are quite happy to sort of have that label applied to them, but quite a lot would be happy to go along with the Labour Party and, you know, keep their jobs safe. But there is this growing rebellion, and I think it's really interesting, this story saying that the measures to combat child poverty are being offered kind of in place of these. And they're different issues. Of course, they both boil down to poverty and they both boil down to supporting vulnerable people. But they're different. And from talking to people that are planning to rebel on this vote, that isn't going to work.
Well, so the only thing I would say is that in the intro of the story, it says they're not going to support the legislation. This doesn't mean that, you know, I can see lots of Labour MPs not supporting it, but deciding not to vote for it instead of voting against it. So I think that we'll see lots of abstentions rather than the big rebellion lots of papers are talking about.
And meanwhile, bickering within the party is still a headache, essentially.
Absolutely.
Let's move on now to The Express. A quarter of new police officers to quit over poor pay. And this is a survey of 10,000 officers across England and Wales. Bethany.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Again, we keep saying there's a headache in government. This is just another one. Their list is growing. 55% of police officers that were surveyed for this study said they felt financial stress was severely affecting their well-being. Now, well-being isn't necessarily something that is free-falling among police. You know, this isn't this is a really difficult job, and if money pressure is affecting well-being, then it's natural to see numbers like this: 9,000 officers left policing in England and Wales
Stark,
last year.
isn't it?
It's stark, and it's one of the big missions of the government is to make Brits feel more safe, is to lower crime rates. You know, crime rose 10% in the year to June 2024, and this is just going to scupper it. And they are going to have to look, I think, at things like this, at support, at pay. But then critics of that are going to say, well, you're just kind of pandering to your union friends, which we've heard before when the Labour government has raised salaries. And that itself is going to be another headache.
Martina, officers having to resort to food banks, one of the other lines coming out this
Well, that's
survey
not
too.
a line the government or anyone wants to hear about. And, you know, also there's reports of officers being assaulted on duty, and we know that they need to plug gaps in mental health and social care. So there's just one thing on top of the other that's really putting the pressure on police officers, and that's why they're quitting. And, you know, Britain cannot keep law and order if we can't even keep our police officers. So.
Yeah, let's move on to well, this is another headache. Goodness me, there's a lot going on at the moment, but this is in The Observer, and that pledge by the government to create nurseries and early years provisions. Has it backfired?
Well, it looks like it has, because basically the government wants to create more nurseries by giving schools money to open new ones in their premises. But instead of helping, some schools are basically kicking out nurseries that were already there, especially those run by private people, just so that the schools can basically get the money and open it themselves. So this is backfiring, and you know, the government has pledged to create more than 100,000 new places for children over 9 months old. But actually, the Early Years Alliance are saying that there might be fewer places as a result of this.
Yeah.
So,
Bethany, it's a headache not only for government, but for families.
For families, and though families are people that the Labour government are really trying to get on side, and this pledge for more childcare places was quite an attractive one in the manifesto. It was something that I think a lot of people really liked. And actually, if this is going to backfire, either because of these sort of loopholes that people are finding, then I think that support that exists for the Labour government that's already shaky is going to get worse.
Yeah, OK. Very briefly then, we're hearing that farmers are going to target new MPs to reverse this tax, this 20% tax on inheritance tax on farming land, agricultural land.
It's another headache. I feel like every time I'm talking to you, I'm so sorry, we're being so negative.
We do have a robot race up our sleeve.
We do.
And there's a penalty,
But yes, so the new Labour MPs that are representing rural areas are being lobbied by the National Farmers Union to actually get the MPs to come and visit farms.
Yeah, instead of protesting at Westminster with tractors.
Yes. So then, in theory, the MPs will understand the farmers' point of view and then go to Chancellor Rachel Reeves and lobby her to make the changes. That's the idea behind this thing. It's really interesting, this. We were talking about the rebellion earlier. A lot of Labour MPs really want to get on the good side of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves for their future career, but they also need to get on the good side of their constituents, and in these rural seats, they have that choice.
OK, we'll leave that there then. And then just finally, it's the Mirror, it's page 11. Love this headline. It was all about humanoids that were taking part in a half marathon in Beijing. The headline here, Usain bolted together in robots race.
I'm not sure.
I know you're terrified, Martina, of this story. These are the pictures. And in the end, I think the robot ran this half marathon in 2 hours and 40
minutes,
which is double the time of one of the humans that took part in it. I'm quite curious about the small one there, to be fair. But anything bigger than that, I'm out.
Yeah, I think the only robot I'd like to have is a vacuum cleaner. But apart from that, yeah, it's quite scary. And where do you draw the line? There's lots of implications about this.
Yes.
It's just quite scary to see one in front of you running like that.
Happy with the arm up. You know, I was in Tokyo about 7 years ago, and we went to interview Asimo, the robot. And what was the most terrifying thing is how it mimicked my movements. And some of those images, you know, they're fun and they're small, but at the very beginning, the robot that was as tall as the other racers in that terrifies me. And obviously, I'm all for advancements and growth in the economy with AI, and that's brilliant. But, yeah, I'm not here for that at all.
Freaks me out a little bit. I'm no runner, but if I saw one of those sprinting towards me, you can bet that I'm going faster than anyone
that's
has.
a unanimous thumbs down.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. Bethany and Martina, thanks so much for your company. And thank you for your company at home. Join us after a very short break for more.
Jubilation in the streets, while some